Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with two friends of mine, Sean Weppner, Ryan Lai. You guys work at Nisos.
We do. I've been there for about 2 years, and I think, Ryan, you've been there for about a year?
Yep.
That's great. That's great. Well,
Yeah.
listen, we're going to get into the company a little bit, but first, Sean, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about how'd you get into technology, get into this racket?
Sure. I always loved technology, loved building things, taking things apart, breaking things, and just kind of naturally fit into, I studied math and computer science and started working in the kind of defense and intelligence communities, building cool new stuff and trying to solve hard problems.
Yeah. You live down in the D.C. area.
I do. Columbia Heights.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You and I are in a couple of panels. I've been down there with you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. DC is a very kind of policy-focused job market, so it's kind of an outsider's perspective looking in because it didn't work in politics, not a policy wonk or a lawyer, so it's always interesting hearing how people think differently about technology, at least in a regulation perspective.
Maryland's kind of cool too because you can live in a house and next door to you somebody at NSA, and on the other side somebody at DOD. It's like a
although you never know it, right?
And you wouldn't know it, right? That's so funny. But it's Maryland, I think, does a nice job with cybersecurity. So I go down to Johns Hopkins frequently. I have a little gig with Applied Physics Lab.
So. APL is great.
Yeah, so it's enjoyable. So welcome to New York.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. Ryan, you've been a techie your whole life?
I haven't actually. What I studied in university was foreign policy.
Wow,
so I'm
that's
a foreign
fantastic.
Policy geek. Yep. I think I've always been interested in technology, and I think where that sort of intersects with geopolitics is cybersecurity, and I was drawn to it for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. I think that increasingly, and maybe surprisingly, when you talk cyber, you're kind of talking geopolitics now, right? It's kind of weird how that the two have intersected, where in the beginning it had nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, quite a bit. And I mean, we're all realizing that the internet has no geographical bounds, and whereas previously governments were able to, or chose to use certain tools to achieve their political objectives, now with the advent of technology and the internet and the spread of the internet, they're able to do so very covertly and clandestinely, and without really fear of repercussions.
It's true. So. Brian, tell me a little bit about Nisos, and I'll hear from you both in a minute. But you guys are a solution provider, consultancy. You guys have some pretty interesting things. What? Tell us about Nisos, the 101.
That's right. We're a cybersecurity services provider. All the activities that we do fall under the rubric of active defense. Yeah. And what we mean by that is we advise and we provide services to our clients that push the envelope all the way up until legal bounds to help them defend their networks and respond to incidents.
Yeah, active defense doesn't mean hacking, right? It's something different there. Maybe it could. I don't know. What is active versus passive defense? How would you characterize the two?
So that is an important distinction. No, we do not mean hacking.
Yeah.
There are a lot of companies who do engage in that sort of hacking back.
That would be offensive.
That would be completely
active
offensive.
Defense is not equal offense. Yeah.
Correct. When we talk about active defense, we're talking under the umbrella of this concept that implementing passive technologies, doing commoditized services is no longer sufficient given the threats that a lot of enterprises are facing. Yeah. So we want to take it one step further. Yeah. And we have the skill sets and the background to do so. Yeah,
Sean, as you guys go out and talk to customers, are there some sectors that look like they're a little further up the river without a paddle than others?
Sure, I would say M&A is a huge area.
Oh yeah.
Especially with larger companies, inorganic growth is how they achieve growth at the pace that they do. And a lot of the risk surface area comes from the fact that they don't really engage in adequate security measures on those new acquisitions and the networks that they inherit and then plug back into their home. It's kind of the effective similarity is if you buy a home, you're going to do a home inspection. You want to know what the sunk cost is to fixing that home that you are potentially going to buy. Similarly, with a network, you need to know what you're inheriting so that you know what's lacking, what's strong, and how you can feel certain in that new acquisition.
When you do a merger or an acquisition, is it essentially a very special case of third party? It's just you're actually marrying the third party instead of using it. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I mean, we come in at various parts of the pipeline, and sometimes it's coming in kind of not everybody knows that there's an acquisition in the works,
Yeah.
and we're coming as that third
I
party
mean, then
compromise.
the acquiring company, the employees don't know. That's
Right.
pretty typical.
Except for
yeah.
a few, right?
A lawyer,
Yeah.
a couple others.
Yeah, so we're doing a compromise assessment kind of with the Yahoo Verizon situation, seeing if there is any evidence of some kind of breach of data that happened prior to or is ongoing. But in a bigger sense, also understanding what that shadow IT looks like, things that aren't covered by patch management, things that aren't covered by other types of antivirus and security appliances that might increase the risk.
So you're looking to determine whether the company that you're about to merge with has some consequential issues, some real problems, systemic. Because I think it's probably hard to really dig in. Just as it's hard with any third party, you can only go so far. Right?
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
Well, and that
It
goes
must be a
back-
challenge.
It is, and it's especially a challenge because the market emphasizes and puts a lot of value on product versus services. They rely on the output of some scan that an appliance does versus actually putting people who have experience in digging through networks in a very efficient pace, being able to suss out the important things versus just kind of an automated report.
Yeah, makes sense. Right, Ryan, what are some trends that you guys see as you're out talking to clients and working engagements? There's probably, what comes to mind, is it cloud? Is it software defined? Is it mobility? Is it APTs? Is it nation states? All the above? When people ask you about trends, what sort of comes top of mind? In
I think
your
all
work?
of the above.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the most sophisticated or mature security programs, SDN, cloud is the top of mind of everyone. One thing that I think we've started noticing, at least in the last 5 years or so, is that companies and boards and executives, not even necessarily confined to security professionals, are starting to understand the gravity of the threat. There have been a lot of highly publicized incidents with real repercussions for business leaders, and that is sort of driving this need or this want for a different approach to handle some of these more advanced threats.
Now, I would think as you do an engagement, if you're doing work for an enterprise security team, like they bring you in to deal with a hard problem, I know you guys do that, I would think that's a different sort of thing, certainly different output than if a senior leader is asking you to do something. They're going to consume a different kind of output. How do you deal with that? The tech, I guess it comes down to if you're dealing with a tech customer who wants to be in the weeds with you, or a board member, that's got to be hard to adjust. Do you guys do that? I imagine you probably go back and forth, right, between that. Is that a tough thing to do? I would think it would be.
Absolutely, it is. It's a line that we kind of have to straddle. For us, it comes down to communication, because when we tackle a problem, we do so in a very comprehensive way, in a way that should, if we do it correctly, satisfy the requirements of both the senior leaders and the security team. But when we communicate the results of that, the messaging is pretty important to, at the higher level, talk about the impact, talk about the potential risk that we've mitigated. Whereas at the more practitioner level, we get down more into the technical weeds.
Makes sense. Sean, tell me about the company and the offerings and so on. Like, are there ways that you categorize things? If I were a potential customer sitting here and I say,
Sure.
Hey, tell me what you do. How do you, what's your taxonomy, or how do you describe the services that you offer?
Yeah, certainly. So, we do everything from kind of the more, not traditional, but attack simulation, so more well-known network side of the house services, as well as some more, I would say, burgeoning fields such as insider threat. And it's not just kind of the malicious insider. A lot of insider threats are unwitting to the fact that they're presenting their employer with undue threat and undue cyber risk. We do a good amount of work in quantifying and qualifying threats for companies. So if your senior leaders are receiving threats from unknown entities, helping to understand if those are real threats.
How do you do that?
Very smart people.
Little investigation going on?
Yeah, for sure. And
I'm sensing you guys kind of live in a couple of different planes in your work.
Yeah, and maybe it would be better just to say kind of most of the work that we do is really a unique fusion of two very different sets of skills that you don't really find in the same company elsewhere. We fuse what we call network operations, which is that advanced network operator hacker, and then fuse that with very highly experienced intelligence analysts. who have done this, again, for some of the most important missions that are out there, whether it be with the U.S. government or the commercial sector. And really what we've found is our differentiator is fusing those two capabilities together, because the real threat isn't a computer, it's a person. So understanding those risks that manifest in a technical fashion, but from the perspective of a human attacker.
That makes good sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. Ryan, on the geopolitical sense, the typical customer, I'm guessing, is becoming a little more savvy. Is that weaving itself into some of the work that you're doing, where they might be asking you guys not just to look at a technical risk, but maybe have a broader perspective and help them understand, given the situation in some region or in the world or in some economy, like, does that weave into some of the cyber work that you guys do?
Absolutely. When we're talking to business leaders at a higher level, that is almost always present as part of the conversation now, the who. And the reason we think that is because, again, there have been a number of highly publicized attacks where nation states have used cyber measures to achieve some very brazen aims.
Yeah.
You see North Korea, hacking banks to essentially to fund their government. You see a number of other incidents where offensive cyber is being used in ways that make everyone essentially a target, and that wasn't something that was well known or accepted as a reality previous to now, and that's very much a part of the conversation. Sure.
Can you do attributable kind of action? Can I, like, if I hired you guys and said I had this thing happen and I really want to know who did it, is that a tractable goal? I know sometimes in the press you see wide swings where some people just assume of course it is, and then other people assume absolutely not. I'm wondering, what do you think? Is it possible to figure out who attacked you?
I think it is absolutely possible. It's possible to do with different grades of confidence.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're talking about intelligence, and a lot of companies out there that publish attribution of certain attack campaigns to a specific actor, I think you really need to understand and look at how they arrived at that conclusion and what their confidence level is.
Yeah.
When we do an attribution engagement, we're leveraging the skill sets of sophisticated attackers that were on the offensive side before. So they know how they would hide. They know how they would leave false clues to confuse your investigators. For us, we take a fine-tooth comb to these types of investigations. We think that we can do a pretty good job at it, but again, it all comes down to an intelligence analysis, right? It comes down to a confidence level. We can never reach 100% attribution, of course, or confidence in an attribution conclusion, but we think we can get farther than almost anyone else.
Is the dark web an important place to be digging around for evidence of attack activity, braggers and other things? Is that one of the places you got to look?
Sure.
Or would it be something else?
Absolutely. We look at a lot of different places. I think for us, one of the first places we start is the attack infrastructure and what we can find based on that. We have accesses to a number of discrete data sets through some of our partners in the security industry. It's about finding little nuggets of information and putting that together into a narrative. The dark web, we've found nowadays, because it has become such a well-known
It's
place
merging with the surface web, isn't it?
Very much
It's
so.
almost indexed at this point, right?
I don't know if you saw FireEye released a report, I think yesterday, that was saying ODAs have dropped. ODA sales on the dark web have dropped dramatically, and that's kind of, I think, a greater trend overall, that criminals know that they're being watched in these forums, in these places, and the analysts joke around that they enter some of these more sensitive forums. Half of it's probably the FBI, and the other half's probably FireEye. And
right, you go there to buy drugs or something. You're buying it from some FBI.
Yeah, exactly.
Agent. Well, that's the right thing. Law enforcement's not dumb. They figure it out.
Right.
Let me ask you the same trend question, Sean, but maybe looking forward more as you deal with clients. Where do you see people moving? Is cloud like the most obvious place that everybody's kind of will be asking questions and dealing with issues? Or maybe there's something else. Where do you see things going based on the trending?
Yeah, I think you see shifting back and forth as it relates to where infrastructure is.
Yeah.
It was very heavily on site, off site. Now it's kind of a combination of both. then you have multi-site, off-site, so that you have backup and redundancy if you have some kind of
Right.
failure.
Right.
I mean, I think you're going to see that continuing to convolute just based on the progression of technology, because locality gives you higher speeds and higher throughput. So I think as things become more commodity, more less expensive, you're going to see that much more infrastructure on site.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it'll shift back and forth. So I think it's going to be an ongoing evolution that you see and adds complexity to the nuance that is cyber, because as those things shift, your positioning shifts, the appliance market shifts, the new offers on the market that say, hey, I've created a solution for this new problem shifts. So it just kind of keeps the target moving.
Yeah. Ryan, any predictions for things coming up? Either on the threat side, the technology side, even the geopolitical side? What do you see coming?
I think the threat side is probably a little difficult to predict, but on the technology side, a lot of security people we talk to, they're pretty overwhelmed. The industry is pretty saturated.
Yeah.
New technologies are coming out every day. If you look at large enterprises, their security stack is pretty unwieldy. Ton of different technologies,
Right.
a lot of overlap. I think a lot of people have talked about this. The industry's crying out for some sort of unified technology solution. But we're encouraged with some of the developments and in some of our technology partners as well. So I do think that there will be some sort of consolidation in the market, hopefully. I think it needs it from the technology perspective. On the threat perspective, the bad guys are pretty smart too. So it's about staying sharp, keeping up to date, and making sure we're doing everything we can to put forth the best defenses we can.
Do you see different countries eventually figuring out how to work together better, maybe having real norms in cybersecurity and just internet in general? Because we don't have good norms now at all.
Right.
They're probably nothing, right? Just basic agreements around BGP and DNS, that's about it.
Right.
Seems like that's a gigantic, like the size of our galaxy, that we don't have treaties and norms. Does that make sense?
It does, and there have been a number of efforts to try to fix that, but those efforts have gone nowhere over the last 15 years. I don't have a good answer for why that is, other than national sovereignty. Everyone has their own priorities, their own beliefs in the way such a treaty should look. But hopefully, you're right. We completely agree that that's something that's sorely needed.
Well, you'd be my vote for somebody who could lead that sort of thing. We'll have to pry out of Nisos and send you off to DC to go lead our cyber norms or something.
I think I'm too collaborative of a personality to succeed.
It'll ruin your life, right?
Yeah.
I used to think to sell it down to DC. I've done work with government my whole life. And I go down, I'm all set to go, I have my tie up nice and bright and drinking my coffee. And then I'm like a cartoon where a guy goes to work and then I'd be coming back, my tie would be down. I'd be like this, like one day of meetings in Washington. And I'm like, look, I just went through a football game in my suit or something. It's a tough business. But
It's like trying to move a building by pushing it.
it's not easy, not easy. But looks like you guys are having fun with the business. Things going well.
Yeah, a lot of
Appreciate
fun.
You, coming to visit, keep doing good work. I know that you guys work in a very important area, and I know you work at those different levels. Probably have a lot of people in your business who have resumes that say worked at government from here to here, can't tell you anything more.
And more redacted than
That means you probably
actual
know what
text.
you're doing. So I have a lot of respect for both of you guys and for the company, and want to thank you for coming by to visit.
Thank you, Ed.
Great
you.
to see you guys.
Likewise.
And we will see you next time.